in there. All right, guys. Good morning. Welcome. Today we're learning Hasidus. We're learning the Rebbe Rashab, and I'm tying it all together today. Today I'm tying it all together. My father's still here. I'd like my father to hear this particular spin that I'm about to share with you today about something that really ties together the whole Maimer of Yodaita. Even though we're still in the middle. We still are in the middle of the Maimer. Nevertheless, I feel that it's necessary at this point, having tasted the Maimer, tasted the discourse, to spend 15 minutes on understanding where we are and where we're going and how this can have a profound, deep, and meaningful impact on our personal lives. Okay? So we started off, just a quick recap. A quick recap is like this, is that we started off by saying that Havaya and Elikim is all one. Havaya and Elikim is all one. It's something, an affirmation we say in the Shema twice a day, in the Aleinu L'Shabeach 3 times a day, countless times. Every single time we make a blessing, Baruch Atah Havaya Elokeinu, we have no idea what we're talking about, right? But we just say it. It's a code that the sages have instituted in our psyche that maybe 3,000 years later we might get a good teacher, a Rebbe Rashab, that will enlighten us. So we explained so far, keep things simple. Havaya is the light and Elokim is the dark. Havaya reveals and Elokim conceals. Havaya is the creative force of God, the presence, felt presence of God. Elokim is the darkness that veils and hides it over, that you don't feel the presence of God. We're saying they're the same thing. We're saying the light and the dark is the same thing. Through a meticulous didactic, the Rebbe Rashab led us through an explanation as to why the light and the dark is the same thing, and he explained to us the following. He said that when you want to explain, the darkness is not in conflict with the light. The darkness is merely a more powerful revelation that is too powerful for light to process. To illustrate with an example, if I'm talking to you about what's going on in the backyard today, I can just tell you what's going on in the backyard today. But and there would be straight up light, no problem. But if I wanted to tell you the nuance of, human psychology as illuminated in the teachings of Hasidus, something very sensitive, subtle, abstract, and profound, I wouldn't be able to just go in and start talking to you about Adam Kadmoin, Atik Yoimin, and Arechanpin, because you wouldn't have a clue what I'm talking about, right? But if I was to illustrate it with an analogy, I would say, well, imagine you have 2 lollipops or 2 marshmallows, and the Stanford marshmallow experiment, I illustrated to you with something that you can relate to. You're like, oh, I understand what he's talking about. What I've done is that I've taken something profound and I've shielded it into something which is completely different. I've hidden it. I've hidden the wisdom into something which is completely different. So here you're able to get a much more profound revelation. Why? Because it's masked in the disguise of the darkness. And that's where we've reached so far, where we say light is revelation, but darkness is a much, much greater revelation, a revelation which is too strong for it to be revealed in a straightforward manner. Okay? To illustrate with another example. We say that absence makes the heart grow fonder. How does that even make sense? Why would absence make the heart grow fonder? But if I have my wife with me now, why would I love her more when she's not here? Can you explain this to me? Does that make even sense? No, we all understand that it's true. But why? Think about it for a moment. Why? If you have the person you love is right here, the mabaya, what's the problem? So she's hidden. I should love her less, not more. The answer is that when my beloved is with me, when I'm in the light, I'm experiencing a much more limited encounter or experience of my beloved. But when my beloved is not with me, I'm experiencing a much deeper sense of their presence. Just to give an example of this, when you're with someone You notice you miss your wife. You're on vacation. You went to Russia. You can't, and on a whole trip you miss her. The minute you come, you walk through the door. What happens? You're hoping that all that desire and yearning will keep up, right? It goes.
Well, it's like this for the first,
right? In the first minute, it goes like this. You know why? Because in the first few moments, you're like, did you have to leave the toilet seat up like that? And like, are you still making that annoying noise? And like, all the idiosyncrasies, all the imperfections, all the attachment disorders, all the annoying things about the person come to light when you're in the light. But when you're far from the person, what do you remember? Only the good. You don't remember the toilet seat. You don't remember the burnt kugel. You don't remember her coming late always, right? You don't remember the annoying things that she says to you. Because all you remember, all you feel is her deeper presence. You know who made this truth, who made this point so explicit? It's in the most beautiful niggin of the Rebbe. The Rebbe has a beautiful niggin, probably the most famous niggin of the Rebbe, which is a psalm of King David in chapter 62. Sama lecha nafshi. Ever heard of this song? Kama lecha besari. King David is saying, my soul yearns for you. My soul thirsts for you, for Hashem. My flesh pines for you. Where? Be'eretz when I'm in a parched and barren desert. I'm thirsty for you when I'm in the desert. Right? Makes sense, right? And then he continues. The Rebbe goes, this is all Psalms of King David, right? If only, halavai, I wish I would miss you as much when I'm in the palace, as much as I miss you. Let me just finish this point. I wish I would miss you as much when I'm in the palace, as much as when I'm in the desert. Because I feel your presence. When I'm in the desert, when I'm far from you, absence makes the heart grow fonder much more than I feel your presence than when I'm right with you. I'm thirsty for water when I'm in the desert. But when I have water, I'm not thirsty for water. I don't appreciate it as much. It's because of this. Sometimes when I drink water and I want to appreciate the gift that Hashem has given us, sometimes I'll close my eyes and I'll imagine myself on a hike in the Drakensberg mountain range of South Africa. We had to hike 4 hours to get the water. You know what I mean? And the feeling of the water coming into your mouth when you're out there will help you appreciate the gift of what you have right here. And I try to remind myself to appreciate it even though I have it, right? Because we appreciate what we don't have. The reason for absence makes the heart grow fonder is because you feel the presence of your loved one more in the dark than you do in the light. And this is a profound concept, profound, because what we're saying over here is that instead of a superficial, shallow perception of reality, which says darkness, night is fear, is the absence of light. It's the opposite of light. Instead of that shallow approach to reality, you're saying that God is good. God is always good. God is always with me. Though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I fear no evil. For you are with me. God is always with me. There's only two ways that he relates to me. Sometimes it's revealed good, and sometimes it's concealed good. The revealed good is good. It's light, but the concealed good is so much better. It's just that it's a light that is more than I'm able to process, and that's why it comes across as dark. You know what the Talmud calls a blind person? Saginaho, an abundance of light. That's what the Talmud calls a blind person. A blind person is a saginaho. What is your question?
I just wanted to make a point with the darkness and the light. I have trouble at night sleeping because I worry about things. But one of the things that my better half gives to me, she just lying there next to me, I sleep peacefully knowing that she's there. So even though I'm in the bed, she's there. Knowing that she's there, I could rest peacefully. So I don't know if that's related.
Sounds good. Thanks for sharing that. So what I was saying was about saginaho. The Talmud calls a blind person an abundance of light. That's a different story. You can't answer all the questions in one shot. I'm not doing an analysis on the blind, but I am saying an example of why would the Talmud call a blind person an abundance of light? Because, listen to this, beautiful. When the soul shines a limited visual energy into the eyeball, then the eyeball can process that energy and you're able to see. But when there's too much light shining into the eyeball, saginaho, an abundance of light, the restrictor is off. It's like a power surge of the soul going into the eyeball. What happens? You don't see nothing. It's not because you have a lack of light, it's because you have too much light, therefore you have darkness. And this is something which is so personal to us, because the Alter Rebbe says in Tanya, when he was comforting the Hasidim on the loss of the tzaddik or Mendel or Docker, I believe it was. The Alter Rebbe says in Tanya that you should know that after the tzaddik dies, you're more connected to him than when he was alive. Yatir mi b'chayohi, more than in his life, you connected than in his death. Now, that sounds ridiculous. Like, what is that supposed to mean? What do you mean I'm more connected to my Rebbe when he's deceased rather than more than when he's alive?
He's not limited by the physical world.
That's right. Because he's no longer limited by the physical world. Because in his lifetime, you can only connect with your grandfather when he's in one place, at one time, in the right frame of mind. He's not hungry, he's not tired, he's not sleeping, he doesn't need the bath. You know what I'm saying? Only under certain perfect circumstances, you're able to connect. When nobody's distracting him, he's not getting a phone call, he's not on Facebook, he's not on WhatsApp, blah, 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 right? All these things, right? But when he passes, when he's divested of the body, the soul is pure, fresh, pristine, unfiltered.
Is that applicable to relatives who were deceased before we ever met them? Are they?
Well, you wouldn't be able to compare them to your relationship in your lifetime, but I wouldn't know that exactly. But Rob, let me ask this question. You just lost your mother. Would you say that you feel her presence in any way?
Oh, yeah, for sure.
In an interesting kind of way, in a way that's difficult to express, to put your finger on. I would venture to suggest that you might be feeling her presence more than you felt in her lifetime. I find that with a lot of people. A lot of people. They're like, interesting. Yeah, I think I could say that.
Also because when you are with a person in their lifetime, you're usually in the moment, that moment, where when the person is deceased, I mean, when I think of my mother now, especially when I say Kaddish, I'm thinking about the whole of her life.
They're not without the limitations.
Without the limitations of time
I understand.
and the impact of that whole life on her, as well as on me and my family.
Exactly. So you are feeling, and this is the reason why. Because
So it's
darkness,
it's limitless.
because darkness is really an intensification of the light. It's too intense for us to process. Now, we related this to relationships. We related this to death. We related it to our relationship with God by King David's Psalm Melech Nafshi, right? And I want to give you one final application of this, and that is to our daily experience. Sometimes you have a day which is light. Your bill, your vendors are paying you. Your bills are paid. You're making money. Everybody's healthy. You're planning a vacation. It's good. And other times you get days when everything's not working out. The flight is canceled. People are not well. You got to fight with your wife. Making money. You got a surprise HOA assessment that was your birthday present, right? You know what I'm saying? You get these days that are really nights, right? You get your struggles. Comes the V'yadaita Moskva and it teaches you to know God. It says you want to know God. God is always there. God is not a little like a little train that you either see him or you don't. No. God is not a toy. You know what I mean? God is ever present. He's always there. He's relating to you in two levels: revealed good and hidden good. When it's revealed good, it's good. But when it's hidden good, in a painful kind of way, it's even better. Now, are we supposed to yearn for the hidden good? Are we supposed to yearn for the night? Well, hopefully we've answered that question, why Havai and Lakim is all one. We realize now, it's a didactic. It's going to take us more time to go through this. We're only halfway through. But, we're starting to realize that darkness is not so scary. Don't be afraid of the dark. That's the message. Don't be afraid of the dark. Embrace the dark. Make a wedding at nighttime. It's beautiful, right? The point is that don't be afraid of the bad times because God is loving you more than. This is Tanya chapter 26 speaks about this beautifully. I gave a class on this once in youtube.com/Jewish Gardens. But the point here is that we redefine our relationship with God as we realize that God is always good. And instead of saying, where was God in the Holocaust? He was asleep at the wheel, like you would say, right? Or like you would say that you had to be there. You had to be there to experience it. What this discourse is, it lifts us up octaves, notches, dimensions to realize that when the painful things happen to you, I'm with you in your distress, to quote the Torah. I'm with you in your suffering. I'm with you in your darkness. I'm with you in your distress. I'm carrying you. Now, God is there with you, and that's very comforting. Am I supposed to aspire to this right now? So am I supposed to say, God, please make life difficult for me because I want to feel your hug? No. This is the Rebbe's call. Our Rebbe who called for Teiv, Hanira, Vanigla. The Rebbe always called for goodness which is revealed, obvious, and apparent. He said, give me the good. I don't want to filter the good. Give me the best possible good. But do it in a way which is also good for me, where it's clear, obvious, and apparent. How do you reach that level? We just read in the book of Psalms. We just said in today's Tehillim, it hit me like a rock as I was saying the Tehillim today. I never noticed this before. It says in today's Tehillim, today's the 28th day of the month. And it says like this. Look at the words of King David in Psalms 139. He says, listen to this incredible depth of King David. You know, people read the Psalms and they like it. They don't like the Psalms. I'm like, you know, it's like commenting on Einstein. I like this Einstein. I don't like that Einstein. You know what I mean? It's like, you know, recognize your space. You know what I mean? Here it is. So here's what he says, King David. Were I to say, surely the darkness will shadow me, then the night would be as light around me. Then the night would be as light around me. King David knows this. He says, night is light. It's not darkness. He's risen himself high. In the next verse, he says, even the darkness obscures nothing from you, and the night shines like day. The night shine like day. Valayla oir ba'adeini. The darkness is a light for me.
I had a similar revelation last week.
Yeah.
With the Psalm, as I walked through the shadow, the valley of the shadow of death.
Yeah.
It was the first time in all the years that I have said that I focused on the word through, which means that you are getting through it. You're not in the valley.
Don't get stuck.
It's not the end. That it is a through.
Yeah.
That as I walk through it, he'll be with me, and I will get to the other side. Never focused on the word through.
Beautiful, nice.
So it's the same thing.
Yeah.
Is that it will become.
But remember, the darkness is just you. It's like being afraid. It's like I'm on the way to Times Square, and I go into the subway, and I'm terrified. I'm in the subway. Relax. Yeah. You're on the way. You're going through. You're getting to Times Square. You're going to come out in a few minutes. Relax. Yeah. But here's the last closing point I want to say. So why does God give us the greater light through darkness? Because we're not ready to receive it. We're like the simple student that doesn't understand the relativity theory, and therefore he needs to tell me a metaphor of lollipops and marshmallows so that I can relate to what he's talking about, right? But what happens when the student matures? Now you can talk to me straight up. Give me a clear revelation. That's V'yodaita Moskva. When we learn V'yodaita and we redefine the darkness, when we learn to do exactly what you just did, when we learn to say, you know what? Where was God in the Holocaust? He was right there. And God is always with me every single step of the way. When you can reach this level of King David, the night is light for me. When I realize the night is light, now I've realized that Havai and Elokim is all one. If I can live on that level, now God doesn't need to give me parables and metaphors and analogies. He can just tell me straight up. Now he can talk to me in the light, and now I can truly experience the revelation of godliness unmasked. That, friends, is the revelation of Mashiach. That is the coming of Mashiach. When Mashiach comes, Hashem will remove the disguise. It says in the prophecy, your teacher will no longer be hidden from you anymore because he can talk to you straight up. The question is, the student has to rise up to be able to reach the level of the teacher. In the Rebbe's words, he says, Mashiach is at our door threshold. He's just waiting for us to invite him in. How do you invite him in, Mashiach? What do you have to do? You have to make a cookie, bake a cake. What happens is what you have to do to invite Mashiach in, you've got to meditate your mind on V'yodaita, Feel it in your heart. That's chachma bina das, idea, understanding. And then das is feeling in your heart what you've understood in your mind. And now you've reached the higher consciousness. Now what happens to Elokim? Elokim becomes a klippas noga. It becomes a transparent klippa, a transparent peel, which is not disguising the three intense klippas, the three dark klippas. It becomes a transparent klippa where the light shines straight through. So just like my glasses, I look through my glasses, but they're clean, hopefully, which is why I can see without saying, oh, Marty, it's nice to see my glasses this morning. I'm not seeing my glasses. I'm seeing you through my glasses. It's through. What were you going to say?
If God was there during the Holocaust, why did he let 6 million people get killed?
If I was God, I would know the answer to that question.
Hard to know with that big guy.
It's above our pay grade.
Right.
It's a good question. It's a good question. But you're assuming.
You get that question about once
Yeah.
a week.
I get about what's a day probably. But you're assuming that we are on the level of God to understand that God is like my pal. And therefore, if I don't understand him, it's like me saying to you, like why would you do what you did, right? Then that's something which I can probably answer, hopefully, right? Because we're on the same level. But when you say, why would God do something? You're assuming that you're on the same level as him. And the premise of the question is false because you're not on the same level as him. It's exactly like the chess piece saying, if there really is a chess player, then why would the chess player put me in the line of fire? I don't understand. The answer is because you're a chess piece made of plastic, and he is a human being, chess master, grand wizard. That's why. Right? You understand what I'm saying with this, right? Good. Anyways, this concludes today, where I wanted to just redefine the darkness. I wanted to tell you where we're going. This is so exciting. It redefines our perception of death. It redefines our perception of struggle. It redefines our perception of relationships, why bad things happen to us. And it defines our entire purpose upon this earth and what we're trying to achieve, all in this tiny little book. There's one mimer of Yadaita Moskva. Just check YouTube, comments coming in. Corey liked this. Nigun, thank you very much. And that's it. Anybody got questions or comments? Yeah.